Right. Welcome to NOAA Live Alaska. My name is Lisa Hiruki-Raring and I'm going to be moderating today's webinar. This series is a collaborative effort by NOAA Fisheries Alaska Fisheries Science Center, where I work, NOAA's Alaska Regional Collaboration Network, and NOAA's National Weather Service. I also wanted to introduce my co-coordinators, Story Oates and Mabel Baldwin-Schaefer, who will be helping me behind the scenes. This webinar series is designed to help you get to know NOAA's work in Alaska, our partners in the communities we work with in Alaska, and how we connect with your communities. NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, studies the ocean and the atmosphere and where the two meet, from weather to ocean to the animals that live around us. This school year, we're presenting short series of webinars that are more regionally based so that we can focus on topics of interest to those regions of Alaska. We are aiming to present perspective from the communities we work with, as well as research conducted by students and established scientists. We hope this gives you a look at different communities as well as different career paths you might be interested in. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Gay Sheffield, who works for the University of Alaska Fairbanks Alaska Sea Grant. While we'll be talking about NOAA's and partners' role in research and stewardship, we want to recognize that we're all coming to you from the traditional lands of Indigenous communities who have substantial traditional and local knowledge and much to share with us. We'd like to acknowledge that Gay is presenting from Nome, Alaska in the Bering Strait region, the traditional homelands and waters of the Yupik, Siberian Yupik, and Inupiaq people. We're hosting this webinar from the traditional lands of the Coast Salish, including the First People of Seattle, the Duwamish people past and present. Mabel is joining us from Benta or Wasilla, the ancestral lands of the Dena'ina and Otna peoples, and Story is joining us from Juneau, where the Occoquan and the Taquaquan Tlingit people have been stewards of their traditional homelands and waters for thousands of years. A few guidelines before I hand you over to Gay. You're all muted because we have a lot of people on the line and we want to make sure everyone can hear our speaker. However, there's a box where you can write questions. We encourage you to ask them as we go, and Story and Mabel and I will be keeping track for Gay. She'll stop every now and again and answer a few questions. We may not get to all of our questions, but we'll try to answer as many as we can. Okay, I will hand it over to Gay to introduce herself.
All right. So thank you, everybody. My name is Gay Sheffield, and I work for the University of Alaska Fairbanks Alaska Sea Grant Program, and I am a public servant of the Bering Strait region, which is, as Lisa had said, the lands and waters of St. Lawrence Island Yupik people, Central Yupik, and Bering Strait Inupiaq peoples. And we'll hear more about it. So today we're going to talk about strait science. And off we go. And you'll see this picture again, because this is kind of the picture that how strait science got started. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. So here's the little, the way it's going to go. We'll have an introduction and to myself and to the region. And then we'll take a break with questions. And we'll do some more of these, and then we'll take breaks along the way, and you guys can ask your questions. So I'm really interested in hearing what your thoughts are or what your questions are. So I look forward to the discussion. All right, so who am I? My name's Gay Sheffield, and I actually was born and raised not in Alaska, in the state of Rhode Island, and on this little island right over here, Aquidneck Island. So Rhode Island, I don't know, do we have any, I guess people can't interact, so we don't know if there's any Rhode Islanders on this call, but shout out to you if there are. It is the smallest state of the United States, and those are my parents, Richard Sheffield and Eula Marie Sheffield, whose nickname was Gay, thus my name. And everything you do on Aquidneck Island has to do with the ocean. We're island people, we would fish, we would play games on the beach. We would go boating all the time. So it was a good background for me as life sort of has unfolded, where I've always been near the ocean for the most part. Small state, and remember that 1,000 square miles. It's about, I think it's about 40 miles by about 25 miles. 40 miles by 25 miles. So it's pretty small. And then that little island there is 5 by 8 miles, really small. Good place to live. And where I'm talking to you from now is Nome, in the state that's all in red there. If you're from Alaska, you already know this, but it sounds like we have people from Florida as well on the call. And it is the largest state. And it took me years to figure out. I ended up in Alaska. I arrived in 1988 and began working with walrus right away down in southern Bering Sea. But now I live up there where that blue circle is in the star. This state, Alaska, is very large. We have, look at that, how big, huge. And it has 66,000 miles of coast, which is more than the Atlantic and the Pacific put together as far as coastline. Ooh, it was made to be on the coast. I love it. And 512 Rhode Islands fit into the state of Alaska. And the reason I know that is because up here, Alaska's so big and Rhode Island so small. Every time there's an oil spill or something bad happens, they say, oh, the spill is the size of Rhode Island. You know, and so they use my state as a unit of measurement up here. It's so big. All right, now where are we? So now we're Rhode Island's off the map at the moment, and we'll focus right in. So Alaska is part of the United States, and we are the Arctic state. We're up north, and you can see that all around Alaska is not the United States. It's all the other countries. And that little star is where I'm calling from, and where I am right now is in Nome. And the yellow box that goes around represents sort of what we would call the Bering Strait region. So we have a border with Russia, and we can't go over there and very easily, especially now that there's some arguments between governments. But there are good people that live on the other side, and I'm a public servant to everybody in the Alaska side. All right, now, just to get ourselves organized as to how Alaska kind of works. The blue is one of our main roads, and the 3 blue stars are our cities, the urban areas. So Fairbanks and Anchorage and Juneau's our capital. You can't drive there, and then of course there may have been people from Seattle, and this is a NOAA program, so I threw Seattle in down there as well. They're in Washington State. So you can drive pretty much Anchorage, Fairbanks, and you can even drive to the top of the state. And that's where the road system ends. There are no roads. You cannot drive to the west coast of Alaska. Just not possible. Nothing there. But there are lots of people living on the west coast of Alaska. And there are 6 main communities. They're kind of the hub for a whole bunch of other communities around each one. So each one of those red stars is what we would call like a rural hub community. And Nome is the rural hub community for the Bering Strait region. That light blue line going in between the word Chukotka and the word Nome is actually the international border between Russia and the United States, or Alaska. And you cannot cross that right now very easily, 1, due to COVID, and 2, due to politics at the moment. But that's okay. So we live very close to the Russian border. And like I said, Nome is the transportation hub for many communities. And we are about 500 miles from the nearest urban center. So like Fairbanks or Anchorage. So lots of country. You can only fly to get here. You can come by dog team. You can come by snow machine. You cannot drive. You can come by boat. It's a long boat trip, but you cannot drive. And in Fairbanks and Anchorage and Juneau, we have the university system for the University of Alaska. We have NOAA, which is the agency in charge of a lot of our marine resources, and also the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in these big hubs, right here, here, and here. I hope you can see my cursor. The little circles, yellow circles, are the communities that would be the coastal communities that are in the Bering Strait region that are under kind of Nome being the hub. And if you auger in and we go closer into that yellow box, you can see a little bit better. Nome is the red star. The line between the countries is the border in the water that you cannot cross. And we're really kind of a mirror image with our Russian neighbor. They have Anadyr, we have Nome, they have the Gulf of Anadyr, we have Norton Sound, and we are a rich, rich marine environment for lots of reasons. And it's beautiful up here, and there are lots. In this example, I'm just using some of the marine animals and just a few. We have so many, I couldn't put them all on here. And we have lots and lots of land animals. And because we are so far away from the urban cities, it's difficult to get to. And because we are so rich in marine resources, that all of them are very important for subsistence. So people will gotta utilize, I think a lot of the people that in urban centers or maybe in Florida and whatnot, you're able to go to big stores. You've got cow farms and cattle ranches and chicken farms and cornfields and all that. None of that exists up here. Not in the Western Alaska. It is living off the land, eating fish, eating marine mammals, seabirds, delicious, delicious, and good for you. So, and here's what I'd want to also say is, so when we use subsistence, the marine resources, the end product is in that right-hand picture. It's for food, delicious food. And that is a meal right there made of seal with some walrus and some wild potatoes. Delicious. And this is always a quote that was told to me in 2006, and it really resonates with me, and that is, the people of the Bering Strait region are a part of the ecosystem. So out here, we live very close to the land, very close to the sea. And because things are changing, and you're all probably, I don't know, they said this is going to be from K through 12, but the world climate is changing and it's warming, even for us up here. And in some ways, the Arctic is getting warmer faster than anywhere else. So we are having massive change in our environment, in our ecosystems, in the kinds of things we see, even industries. And so lots is happening. And the peoples of the Bering Strait region, I don't care which side you live on, honestly, whether you're Chukotkin Russian or Alaskan American, this region needs to understand what is going on. The people here have occupied this area for at least 5,000 years and comprehensively used the ecosystem. So people here are very aware of the change. But the Western science has the opportunity of bringing in some equipment that is not available, helicopters, offshore research vessels. So what are they seeing? What are they learning? Together, that would be really good information to share. All right, so this is our first little break. And I don't know, Lisa, do you want to ask questions, or do you want me to, how do you want to handle this?
So we're looking at questions behind the scenes here. So I definitely have some that, and I would like to encourage anybody in our audience who has questions, please feel free to type them into your question box. I did have a question about the size. You had talked about the urban cities and then the hubs and then the villages. And so the question was, what's the population size of like say one of the cities versus Nome as the hub versus one of the villages or some of the villages?
Oh, okay, so for Anchorage, which I think is our biggest city, I want to say there's probably, and maybe Mabel, you can help me, 400,000 people. That should be the biggest city in Alaska. And then for Nome, we have about 3,000, a little over 3,000 people here seasonally, depends, it goes up and down. And then our biggest hub community, those yellow dots, the biggest community has 700 people in it. 750.
Okay. Yeah.
And it goes right on down to, like, you can go down to under 100 in some of the smaller dots.
Yeah, that gives a good size sense of it. And I just looked up the population of Anchorage on the web here, and as of 2019, it was just under 300,000. So you were pretty close.
Good guess.
So, so that kind of gives the contrast that you were making between the urban centers and rural Alaska. I'm really glad to hear that. And then you were talking about how scientists come to to your region because there's so many animals and resources that can be studied. Do you have a sense of how many studies, like for instance, that you're aware of as a person in Nome?
Well, the trick is that because our resources, many of them in the ocean, are federally managed, so the federal managers have an obligation to check on the health and numbers of animals. So, are the walrus healthy? Are there enough to harvest? Are the seabirds, all the things that we have. So there's a lot of agency science that is obligated to come and do research and make sure that animals are okay, doing okay, especially with the times of change we have on us. And then there's other researchers that can come maybe to help answer those kind of questions, or they have their own studies and they need to come up here for some reason. So they can come from afar. I'm not sure if I answered that right.
I think that kind
Oh,
of
how
gets
many
the kinds
studies?
of,
Oh gosh,
yeah.
I would say so far in straight science, we've done, last year we did 30 presentations in a year, and that
Wow.
didn't even touch the surface. I mean, there's a lot of science going on at
Right.
sea and on land, especially
Yeah.
nowadays.
So Michelle was wondering whether you have a lot of interaction with Russia, like you were talking about Chukotka, Russia, and Alaska, and whether you have a lot of communication going on with folks over there.
Not that we're going to tell you. No, I'm just kidding. We, it's hard to, now we cannot. It's very difficult. And in fact, for most of our federal friends, they cannot even be in a meeting where there's a Russian person or Russian. It's very difficult right now. The border is a serious border, always has been. Once it was established in 1949, very clearly it was going to be serious. But this is, if we didn't have the geopolitical problems that the world is facing right this minute, this is a neighborhood that, I could get into it, but this is a neighborhood. Alaska and Chukotka are neighbors in the Bering Strait region. We share the weather. We're closer to each other than our urban centers, either of us. So we are sharing the same weather today that they are sharing in Eastern Russia. I don't know what's going on in Anchorage as far as the weather, but I could tell you what the weather would be like in Providenia right now. We
Right.
share food, and people share kinship. Alaska Native and Chukotka Native are related, and so it's share language. It's very difficult border at times, and right now it's a little rough than it could be.
Right.
Normally, though, there
Right.
could be more communications, and there would be. Yeah,
Right.
hope that helps.
Yeah.
Hope we get over
Yeah.
this soon.
Yes. Yes.
We're a good
Um,
neighborhood.
yes. So Azul was wondering about the road system in Alaska. You were talking about how you can get by road from Anchorage to Fairbanks and up north, but not to Nome. But there are local roads, is that right? Or but you can't
In
drive from Fairbanks to Nome. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, you cannot drive from Fairbanks to Nome at all. You cannot drive out to the west of Anchorage. There's just no roads connecting. So
Mhm.
in Nome, of course, we have a road from the airport to to town, and we all live in little driveways and things like that. So in Nome, we have driveways and things and roads to get us around, but it's pretty tight for the most part. And then, of course, if you're on a place like Diomede in the middle of the Bering Strait, or you don't need a road, you just walk around. So I guess there's roads and paths, but there's not a lot of vehicles in some of the communities here. Four-wheelers,
Right.
not cars or trucks.
And then the last question before we go on to your next section is that Nancy was wondering whether you get earthquakes.
I don't like earthquakes, and we do but it's very rare. I've been here in this region for about, I don't know, 30 years on and off, working out here and now living out here. And I've only been in one here, and that was a 5.4 or 5 magnitude. It shook. And I used to live in Fairbanks where we had many more earthquakes. So I was like, gee, here too. But occasionally it happens. Occasionally it happens. Very rare though, happily.
Yeah, happily. All right, well, I know you have a lot more to share with us, so maybe we should go on to your next section.
All right. And thanks for all the questions. Those are really interesting to me. All right, so what is Straight Science? Straight Science is a evening science presentation series put on by UAF Northwest Campus. So the University of Alaska Fairbanks has rural campuses, and there's one here in Nome. Usually they're in the hub communities. So Nome and Kotzebue and Dillingham, those are where we have UAF, and in other places as well. And of course, my program, I belong to UAF Fairbanks, but UAF Northwest Campus gives me a room, and we all act as a big team, and we work together to produce Straight Science. So we use their facilities, and they do the beautiful posters. All right, and we have two goals, and one is to be, let's see if I can do this. Yep, two goals, and that is to connect. Remember, we have all these people coming out here from all these urban settings, or even from a different country or far away, and they're coming out here only for a short time to get their data, and then they go away again. Well, we need to know, not what we just want to know, we need to know in this region what they found. It's critical nowadays to find out what have they seen. One, maybe they should be talking, have we seen it too? That might be helpful to them. And or what can we learn from what they've discovered? So that's why we want to hear about the results. We want to get to meet these people, and connecting coastal people here with urban-based researchers so that we can start a dialogue. Because communications, it's better to have it than not. Now, so far, here's the spoiler. We've had 180 presentations since Straight Science was born, and I'll talk about that. And in rural Alaska, having 3,800 participants is no small feat. And that is just for the Nome-based presentations. All right, so here's the problem. Here was the problem, or in some ways we've just started to chip away at it. So we have marine and land research. We have animals in the ocean. We have lots of animals on the land, and we have people, all kinds of, lots of interesting snow and ice, permafrost, you name it, earthquakes. And we have had in the past difficult time. A lot of people in the urban centers, as people used to be more together, and now they only come once in a while or seasonally. So communications has been, in the near past, very sporadic, and there was no stability to it and no real forum for a lot of the communications from all the researchers. I mean, all kinds of projects and things were going on. And so there'd be a lot of question as what's going on, or worse, when people don't talk to each other and they're seeing each other, kind of looking at each other, and they're not talking, a lot of things can get misconstrued or misunderstood. And so people would eventually sometimes have difficulties. And honestly, this slide reminds me that Western researchers and the community members of Western and Northern Alaska really have more in common than not. Traditional and local knowledge by rural residents, coastal residents of Northern and Western Alaska is so rich, so comprehensive, that I can only talk about some of the just a portion of that when we talk about observational information, biology, ecology. There's way more to it than that. For Western science, typically a researcher will come out with a specific question they need answered. Like, how are the seals? Are they fat? Are they skinny? Are they having their babies correctly? All that. The scientific method, the basic scientific method, is to make repeated observations of something to be able to make a prediction, make a forecast. So whereas Western science is trying to do that, honestly, a lot of rural Alaska's observations, scientists, both are scientists, and I was always trained, rural Alaska and Western science are scientists. I think for place-based, the data that and comprehensive information, even beyond just the basic, what a Western scientist would look at, it's so rich, traditional and ecological and what would you call it? Local knowledge. Whew. So really the two groups, they deliver their science differently. They serve different peoples oftentimes, but the root of it is very common. If you need to know at this time of year, people are going boating to try to find seals to harvest. You're not just going to drive willy-nilly in the ice. That's dangerous and waste of gas, but you know where animals are at certain times of the year. Why? Because you've done repeated observations over time. You already know. Same with Western science. A lot of it's done in a lab. We'll do experiments until we can understand what's going to happen. So there's actually a lot of commonality. Hopefully I've said that right. All right, so what happened? How did this straight science even start? Well, this picture, which was at the beginning, so we had a very unusual event occur. And that ship is the US Coast Guard. That's the American icebreaker, the Healy. And we don't usually see it. This is January in the middle of the day, and you can see this is a little cloudy, but that's as light as it's going to get. And to me, they were coming to deliver us fuel in January of 2012. Holy cow. We do not get ships cutting through the ice in January. That is the thick of winter. It was at this time, it was about -25, -30 below. The ship was having a terrible time getting up here, and they were breaking ice to get a fuel tanker to Nome so Nome could get some fuel. All right, I can't tell you how extraordinary, unusual that was. That ship represents that sort of urban. Everyone on that ship is interneted up, and they have a lot of research on there, and they were doing their job. And there was a lot of researchers coming out to Nome to meet this ship to help them try to break the ice and figure a way forward. Meanwhile, here's all the local people watching from afar. So to me, that was sort of the problem. Rural, urban. But we had this very unusual moment in time. So with all those researchers coming to Nome to help the ship, in Nome, they were using the university, and so they had brought with them drones. Now, all of you guys know what a drone is, but in 2012, we'd never seen a drone. We'd kind of heard about these little flying robots, and wow. So we asked this fella here on January 11th if he would talk to us. Just tell us, what is it, this thing that you have, and what are you going to do with it? And he gave his talk. And so Straight Science was born on January 11th, 2012, when the Healy came to town. And we'll take a break right there.
So that was really interesting in that it kind of was born unexpectedly. Had you had scientists giving talks just to the community in the past, but it wasn't really connected into a series that like what you're coordinating now?
There would be things like, and this is going to be not make sense to anybody outside of Alaska, but we have things for the managing agencies. They have certain meetings for Board of Fish, Board of Game, Rural Advisory Committee meetings, but they're meeting for a specific topic, not necessarily from a managerial standpoint as a local manager. Typically, the state of Alaska does that. And so if you want to know how bears are doing, you'd go to the Board of Game meeting, and they would talk about bears. But it'd be a one or two times a year. It is you'd have to wait for the bear topic to come up, and that's fine. It works actually pretty well. It's just that if you had a specific question about something about clams or I don't know, something else, you wouldn't really hear about it. They're very scheduled, and they're for the general public. But again, you'd have to be physically in an area where those meetings are being held to go, or you could listen on the telephone.
Right. Right. So, yeah,
Used
so
to be.
that's so would you in your years living in Nome, would you find that you would be wondering what people were finding from their research as you saw scientists coming in and out of town, or would they sometimes, like you were saying, that they would give presentations to these management meetings, but did they
That's the
talk?
state. The
Oh, I
marine
see.
mammals, for example, the marine mammals are federally managed, and we would see marine mammal biologists come out, and then it was very difficult to get the results in a public forum. So there was really no way for them to do that except maybe to write the tribe. Well, there's probably a lot of ways they could do it, but the way it was being done and is still being done, and that's good, is to write a report back to the tribe. But for the rest of the public, if the tribe is on an island or outside of Nome and you're a community and you want to know what happened, I saw there was a guy studying walrus. What happened? You would be hard to find the answer. You'd have
Right.
to find hard to get the answer because people
Well,
live far away. It's just the way it works.
yeah, yeah. Well, you were showing how everybody was kind of scattered along the coastline in that map that you had. Beth
Yeah,
had a
we have no
question about
roads to each other.
that's
I should have
that's
said
right.
that.
Yeah.
No roads to each other.
So Beth had a question about whether you could give any examples. So you had been talking about local and traditional indigenous knowledge and just, the observation that comes from living in one place for a long time and observing repeatedly what's happening. And so Beth was asking whether you could give any examples where rural insights or observations have contributed to or integrated with the information from the urban researchers who are coming in to do their studies.
Oh, countless. I mean, and that'll you'll see at the end of this, it's much better science to be integrated in with the people that are living and looking at the coast every day and have already a tremendous comprehensive knowledge of the Bering
Right.
Strait region. When we're talking about either land-based, there's lots of things. I mean, it depends on what topic. If it's about permafrost or about, I don't know. But my realm as a marine mammal biologist, for the animals side of the house and for a lot of even the sea ice, again and again and again, the science is always lifted up and made more comprehensive when there is communication,
Right.
because it's so information is comprehensive here. Now, in some cases like fish, people are typically fishing near shore. So when a research vessel is doing research on fish, maybe 100 miles offshore, that is where you can start to really have a good conversation as well, about what did you see near shore and what have you seen offshore. That is also another way that people can kind of cross-validate what they're seeing and brings people together. That's a sort of an equal, or I don't know what you'd call that, integrated. And then the other is, here's what I learned as a person from Virginia studying seals for 2 years on the sea ice. Is this what would be considered normal? And then the people that are utilizing seals, all types of seals, every year, they would be able to say, well, that actually, we've seen that too, and that's not right. Or, yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. Not a big deal. That's where you also can get that
Yeah,
lifting up of the science, better science,
that totally
better
makes
results.
sense. And I remember that you were also talking to me about migration timing and how people who have observed marine mammals and moose and animals that come in and out of the area at certain times of year, that they could see the changes as the climate is changing in terms of the timing of when the animals are coming by versus when they used to come by. And that kind of historical information is really, it adds so much richness to, like you say, a 2-year study.
So right now, for example, the sea ice is here, and the sea ice is, people are asking, well, is it melting fast this year? You got to ask someone who's lived here for years and years. Yes, actually. And the Western science is watching from the satellites. But to put it all in context, right now we're a month ahead of ourselves as far as melt out. It's been, we're losing our ice very quickly, and that has a lot of there's a lot of good things that happen with sea ice, especially in the spring.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Like Mabel just missed out on, she was going to come up, Mabel, who you all just met, she was going to come up and go crabbing. We have king crab up here, and she was going to fish through the ice, but the ice is all but gone in front of Nome, so she's missed out.
Oh. Yeah,
Too
a lot
early.
of changes. Yep.
Too early for it to go.
Well, I know that you wanted to talk about lessons learned from straight science, so maybe we should go to your next section, and then we'll hold our questions for now.
Now, let's see. There we go. So lessons learned along the way. Here we had this fella that gave us on January 11th a talk about drones. And from there, we tried to figure, can we do it again? So we started the old-fashioned way. We just printed up posters when people would have a topic they would like to talk to us about, and we'd hang them up at the post office. We'd hang them up at the store. We would advertise locally. We were just trying to get Nome, like, Nome, here's an opportunity. These people are coming, and they're coming to Nome, and they may have something interesting or something really important to tell us. So advertise locally. We tried all kinds of rooms. Sometimes we'd have success where you'd pack a room if it was a hot topic, or we'd have few people, but it doesn't matter. People that came were interested. And so we didn't look at the numbers. And anything to do with science. It doesn't have to be about seals. It could be about fish. It could be this fella riding the bike in the upper right-hand corner. He's pedaling a bike to make that video game work. He's in a helicopter. He thinks he's in a helicopter. He's got a virtual reality headset. We talk about all different kinds. There's so many different kinds of sciences, and we're just so much going on. We can't capture them all. But sometimes we'd have crowds. Sometimes we'd have to meet in the lab, a library, a classroom. It didn't matter. The point was to get people together to talk. And then outside of Nome, people in the region. So in those remoter communities, remember, we don't have roads, so you can't drive to Gamble. You can't drive to Koyuk or Shaktoolik. So use the telephone. This is before, we started using the telephone. So that's where we would meet. We're about ready to meet in a conference. The plug for the phone is too short, so I have it on a chair, but the speaker is going to stand by that podium. You can see their slideshow kind of showing on the screen. And he's just going to have to talk real loud, and people will hear. They won't be able to see the slides, but if it was an interesting topic or an important topic, people sure want to hear about it. Because in this case, internet is not always available in our region. One, it's broken sometimes. It just doesn't work, or our cell phones don't work. This is rugged country, and it's really difficult. So the internet is not always available. So in this picture, this is on Diomede around Halloween. It looks like from the windows, you can see the pumpkins. And that arrow points to the little phone. They have it on speakerphone, and they are joining in. They've printed out the slideshow. Sometimes we can send them email. If email's not working, I'll print out a hard copy and put it on a plane or the helicopter to Diomede. And that way people are sitting around watching the presentation and listening on the telephone. Probably very different than how it's done in other places, if there's anyone else outside of Alaska listening. And then we started to realize, hey, let's work with the newspaper. We have a once a week newspaper. It only comes out once a week on Thursdays. It's 50 cents. And it's got all the news you want to read for the whole week. And they started covering straight science. And it brought straight science out to people who couldn't listen to it. Maybe they were busy that night. Maybe they don't have a good phone connection. Maybe they don't own a phone. So the Straight Science was a way also to send out the news and the results of interest, and it has to be from this region. So all these things, hares, Mackay's buntings, walruses, the weather, fish, all of these are about the Bering Strait region. And we also, then the radio wanted to get in on it. Now they also have online, so they would write these colorful stories, and they would also play clips. And we just found out now they're going to broadcast Straight Science on Tuesday nights, starting pretty soon, the whole thing, recordings of it, so that people sitting 200 miles offshore on St. Lawrence Island can also, if they want to tune in on a topic, they can listen in on their radio. All right, so we had that going on. We were sending things and doing phone calls and sending hard copies in the mail and putting them on planes to get to people. And then COVID happens. I couldn't believe, well, we all couldn't believe it, could we? And we got used to wearing masks. And we got used to the COVID vaccine, all that excitement. But we also got used to Zoom. Now, I know this isn't Zoom, but that's what we use at the university. So we got used to this thing called Zoom. Holy moly, that's probably the best thing for Western Alaska to come out of the pandemic. Now remember, the internet is very difficult, but what Zoom did for us in the hub was allowed speakers to stay at their home, but still broadcast to Nome and the region. So we zoomed away, zoom it up. We have, and this is just some of the, I just took some clips of people that were doing studies on the Shaktoolik archaeological dig, salmon shark tagging, our history-making weather, and the United States Coast Guard leader for all of Alaska, Admiral Bell, and he was telling us about what the Coast Guard was doing traveling up here. So this really opened up a whole new thing, and off we zoomed. Now, this just shows you the little masks on the bottom. That's when the pandemic hit and everybody was COVID worried. And you can see we kind of hit a plateau from 2012. It went up and down and up and down. But boy, once the pandemic hit, I thought we were sunk. No one's coming to Nome because everyone had to stay away. All the researchers had to stay away. But instead, with the help of Zoom, the researchers could still come to Nome, but via the computer. And for those that are interested, pre-pandemic and going virtual, we actually kind of, though it looks like it didn't just stay the same, 21.7 and 21.6. One device can have multiple people on it. So in some ways, we gained more of a audience. All right, and we had a couple things come out of that we didn't expect. You can record Zoom. All right, so we had these recordings, and then there's this thing called YouTube. We put them on YouTube, and look at that. Since we started putting them on YouTube, since the pandemic started in 2020, we've got about 65 presentations, and you can Google them up on, or whatever you do. YouTube, search for UAF Straight Science series channel, and you should be able to get it. Or Northwest Campus has the 65 presentations available on their website, and just click on it. And since 2020, we have almost, we're on our way to doubling all the previous years of in-person and telephone participants. It's really been interesting. And I don't know who the audience is, but we've been so surprised in 2 years to have so many viewers. Very interesting. And then locally here, we have the Nome Belts High School. That's our only high school. We're our own school district in Nome, which is kind of curious and interesting. And Sarah Lieben, hope she's listening, because she had it in her mind that the kids could learn from Straight Science. We have these researchers coming. They're talking about the Bering Strait region. And so she worked with UAF Northwest Campus University of Alaska Fairbanks, that is, Northwest Campus, and was able to get a 1 college credit course for the high schoolers to take. And so what we do, that's me in her classroom. We talk about the talks, we talk about the big overview of what's happening in our region and why these scientists are coming, to put it in context. And the kids have to, I think they're going to be writing up, they write reports, they come to the straight science talks, or they watch the tape ones. And then I think one of their finals that's coming up, because school's about to end, they actually have to write something for the newspaper, our regional newspaper. So go Ms. Lieben and go Nanooks, Nome Belts Nanooks. That's our mascot is the polar bear, which is Nanook in Inupiaq. So that has been an offshoot, just kept growing. And so I'll stop there and see if there's any questions.
All right, thanks, Kate. That's very exciting. It's one of the questions we have is, what part of doing straight science do you like the best?
Well, I like getting people who've never heard there's an opportunity for themselves to speak and provide. They get excited about actually reaching out to this region, and that they can do it without traveling. We wish the best thing they could do is be here in person, but we'll take what we can get. And if that means a Zoom, then we'll take it. My best part in the whole straight science, once it's rolling and we're underway with a speaker, is when we have the question period at the end. Because we will have questions from callers, and sometimes they have such information that the scientist is completely blown away, and they're like, oh, you're kidding. Oh, wait, I want to hear more about, or the information is very useful to the community. And it's just good for people to better understand. I mean, we have so many different topics that it's really interesting to see that dialogue start.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be really exciting, just to see that interaction between the people who are asking questions and the presenters, and the sharing of knowledge that way. And so I would find that really exciting as well. I find for myself, that the connection with the education aspect of things to be really exciting as well. And I was wondering, is this the first year that you're doing that, or has it been going on for a couple of semesters?
The college credit?
Mm-hmm.
This is the first year. This is its first year. So really, it's just kind of an offshoot of having those recordings available thanks to Zoom and YouTube, which in some way is thanks to the pandemic, because it made us, we thought we were sunk, but we had to keep just, what can we do? How can we make this work for everybody? We can't give up yet. So it's actually took a life of its own. It is a little bit arduous to go through the process to get a college class approved, right, for straight science for the Nome Belts. And Sarah Lieben did it, and she was brilliant. She also didn't give up.
That's great. Because I know they do something similar at the Sitka Whale Fest, where they have students go to the presentations, and then they get some credit for writing a report afterwards. So I really I commend you and Nome Belts High School for kind of taking the opportunity and sort of and running with it and making something so productive out of it.
Yeah, it was a total surprise, wonderful surprise.
Yeah. Carol was wondering how many students are in the high school.
Oh, good question. I honestly don't know. We have the elementary and the high school, a couple hundred, I suppose. I'd have to look that up.
Number of students at Nome Belts Junior High, Senior High School is 322. So.
And like I say, it's our only, well, we have Anvil City Academy, which is a smaller, sort of like a private school, charter school, and the high school. So not too many more students.
And then Carol had also asked in your webinar series, how many community events are there? I think that you had said that you were up to, was it 30 per year? 30 per year
Well,
this, or was it
I don't know if we'll make that. Last year was crazy. Everybody had a
Yeah.
lot of more time, I guess, and Zoom was a little bit more comfortable. So we had over 30, I think we had 32 presentations in 21.
Uh-huh.
And I think we've done about 13 since January this year. And we just had a cancellation, unfortunately.
Wow. That's great. That's so encouraging to see that. And it would be great if it could come full circle and the high schoolers could do a presentation on what they'd learned from straight science as well.
Yeah, we've talked about getting the students to do something. So,
Right. Okay, well, I see that we have about 9 minutes left, so maybe we should just go to your last section here.
all right. And thanks everybody for sticking with it. All right. So the last thing was like how you can do it, or I don't know, for me, it was so exciting. And for me, that these bullets are kind of really resonate for me living in rural Alaska. So number one, it's best to have face-to-face communication. And I hope that Straight Science will now, with pandemic slowing down, maybe we can get back to that. So face-to-face is the best. I think we will always have the Zoom option so that, if you can't, it's better to hear than not hear at all. So allow face-to-face, allow time to talk, real time to talk. And locally here, or wherever you are, listeners, use what you have. So I often see, everyone's like, well, we need this. Out here, people will use what we have because it's really hard to get more of anything. And so we did the same thing. Well, we have these scientists coming. I don't know, we've got a classroom. Let's make them talk. Then it became, let's use the newspaper. Let's use the internet. And now we have the school. Let's use Zoom. Let's use YouTube. What have we got right here that we can try to change or try to use? And then keep adapting. And this could go for so many things in rural Alaska. Keep adapting with the changes. All right, we went from the telephone or from just in the classroom to the telephone to reach out. And then the pandemic. We thought we were going to be out of business. Nope. It turned out if you learned how to use that Zoom or any of the other cloud-based media application type things, you could make it happen. And it continued. It actually thrived. And the last one was never give up, because it's easy to give up, but don't give up. That's a motto out here. You can't live in Western Alaska and tell people to give up. Nuh-uh. You just keep trying, and eventually you'll figure something out. May not be exactly what you thought it would be in the first place, but you've got what you've got. Never give up. So to finish, Straight Science was really unexpected. And I have to bring it back to this picture because it really caught me that we had this gap between the urban, the big science, big industry, all that, and then the people of the coast. So this was just a beautiful thing, that unusual, unexpected situation, and we used it. Use what you've got. Well, we got this unusual situation. We used it, and that guy started telling us about these flying robots, these drones. And has that problem where the two kids are yelling at each other, has the problem of communication been solved? Not completely. That's a living problem. That is a problem that you just constantly have to work at. But I think Straight Science takes a step towards that. Absolutely. It's gotten more people, more topics, and spread through a very remote region. But newspaper, radio, internet, phone, you can actually start to understand, and the speakers also can see and interact with all of the people of the region, so they start to get a better understanding. More communications, yep, better awareness, and like we said earlier, much better science when you're actually talking Western science, coastal peoples, their science, the science of this region. Who better knows, right? It doesn't work all the time because sometimes it's like equipment or sometimes it's something so esoteric like, I don't know. But I would say the science, better, better, better for everyone, especially the managers and researchers that are in charge of land-based and marine wildlife resources. So at the end, we can all be part of a solution. I don't know what it's like where you all live, but if there's a communication problem or a problem where more communications could help, you too can be part of the solution. We didn't expect straight science to, we didn't see it coming. We just used what came in front of us, and it seems to be working and bringing people together. It's not perfect. There's more to be done, but it is a step forward. And with that, thank you so much for having me give a talk. And those is a shout out to Northwest Campus. That's their logo on the left, University of Alaska Fairbanks, and the Alaska Sea Grant UAF, University of Alaska Fairbanks logo on the right. And thank you, Igamsaganahalik and Koyanak. Those are how we say thank you in 3 different languages: English, St. Lawrence Island Yupik, and Inupiaq, and Inupiaq.
Well, thank you so much, Gay, for sharing all of your knowledge with us. It was very exciting to see the growth of Straight Science. And I know that we've mentioned Straight Science in a couple of our other NOAA Live Alaska webinars because it's just been such a great way for us to connect with communities. And a lot of that is from the facilitation that you've been able to do. So I'm very excited to see all of the outcomes from this last few years. And I did have one last question from Nancy, who is wondering whether you can see walruses, seals, and penguins. Well, actually, I guess not penguins because they're from the Antarctic, but walruses and seals from your house.
No, you can't see them from my house because I live behind the hill. I can't see the ocean. But in Nome, now just here's a trick. Penguins and polar bears, if they're never in the same place, because a polar bear would eat every penguin. So penguins live in the Antarctica, polar bears live in the Arctic. So that we don't have penguins. Well, there is a funny story, but anyway. But polar bears live in the north, penguins live in the south. And we can see seals and walrus from right in front of Nome. Yeah, absolutely. And this time of year, actually, because the ice is on the move, the animals like seals and walrus are on the ice, so you can see them. And it's a terrific. And people are also not just watching them, they're harvesting them as well for food. So it's very exciting, very dynamic time of year. Our seal populations and our walrus population are very healthy, in case anybody was wondering about that. And we don't normally see polar bears, although that does occur rarely, but it does occur. It has not for a while in front of Nome. Are they around Nome? Absolutely. Wherever there is sea ice in the Bering, Chukchi, and Beaufort Seas, and we're in front of the Bering Sea here, they're polar bears. They just don't come close to town. We're too noisy with the airport and what vehicles we do have driving to the store and the airport and school and things.
Well, thank you so much, Gay. I have one last question for you, which is if you had any advice to give to our students who are watching. I know that you had talked about, the lessons learned from Straight Science, but if you were to have one piece of advice to give to our students, what would you tell them?
Never give up. Never give up. And it's okay if you don't know what you want to do. I guess I'd have 2 pieces of advice. 1, do something. Don't just sit. Do something. If it's volunteering at the hospital, if it's learning how to hunt, if it's learning how to be an artist, learning how to sing, there's so many things you can do. Do something, because you'll start to figure out what you're good at, what you enjoy, what you don't like at all. And that will sort of take you on a trail to where you're supposed to be headed. And it's your trail. You're the one walking it. So I would try everything, especially to be so young and you can try any kind of thing and never give up. Maybe something you don't want to do it, but if there's something you want to do, Don't give up. Don't give up. We don't have any other big comprehensive motto out here in Western Alaska than never give up.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Gay, for sharing your information with us for a very interesting Know Alive Alaska webinar, and we really appreciate the time you took. And thank you to our audience for coming to our talk. We do not have a webinar next week, but our last webinar of the series will be on April, I'm still in April. It will be on May the 17th, and we will be talking about deep sea corals. So thank you, Gay. Thank you to our audience, and please come back in 2 weeks, and we will see you later. Bye-bye.